October 1944. Nancy, France. General George Patton's Third Army headquarters occupied a requisitioned French mansion 3 kilometers behind the front lines. At 14:47 hours, a sound like distant thunder rolled across the Lorraine countryside. Patton's intelligence officer, Colonel Oscar Koch, looked up from his maps. That wasn't thunder. That was artillery, heavy artillery, and it was getting closer. 64 kilometers to the east, concealed in a railway tunnel near the German border, Oberst Friedrich Müller checked his watch. His K5 railway gun, all 218 tons of it, had just fired its first ranging shot toward the American command center. Müller had 30 minutes. 30 minutes before American counter-battery fire would locate his position. 30 minutes before he'd have to retreat back into the tunnel. 30 minutes to kill the most dangerous general in the Allied Army. September 1944 had been brutal for the Third Army. After the spectacular breakout from Normandy and the lightning advance across France, Patton's forces had slammed into the Siegfried Line, Germany's western defensive wall. The easy victories were over. Nancy became Patton's forward headquarters on September 15th. The city sat at a critical junction, the Moselle River to the west, the Meurthe River to the east, and rail lines connecting to Metz, Strasbourg, and the German industrial heartland. For the Germans, Nancy represented an existential threat. If Patton broke through here, the road to the Rhine, and Germany itself, lay open. Wehrmacht commanders knew they had to stop him, or kill him. German artillery doctrine in late 1944 emphasized Schwerpunkt, concentration of force at decisive points, and nothing concentrated force like the K5 railway gun. The K5, nicknamed Leopold by Allied troops, was a monster. Its 283mm barrel stretched 21.5 meters. It could hurl a 255-kilogram shell up to 64 kilometers with devastating accuracy. With rocket-assisted arrow projectiles, its maximum range extended to 151 kilometers. But the K5 had critical vulnerabilities. It could only traverse 2 degrees left or right, meaning the entire gun had to be positioned on curved track sections for lateral aiming. It required a crew of 15 men and could fire only 15 rounds per hour. And most critically, it needed railway infrastructure. By October 1944, Allied air superiority had made daytime railway movement suicidal. German heavy artillery operated from tunnels, emerging only for brief fire missions before retreating to safety. The Germans had positioned at least 2 K5 guns in the Nancy sector, one near Saarbrücken, another near the Luxembourg border. Both could reach Patton's headquarters. Wehrmacht intelligence had pinpointed the Third Army Command Center through radio traffic analysis, aerial reconnaissance, and reports from stay-behind agents. They knew Patton held daily briefings at 1500 hours. They knew the exact building. On October 12, 1944, German Artillery Command issued Fire Mission 447. Neutralize enemy command center, Nancy sector. Priority, immediate. Authorization, OKW. Oberst Müller received the order at 13:30 hours. He had 90 minutes to prepare. Oberst Friedrich Müller was not a typical artillery officer. At 42, he'd commanded railway artillery since 1941, first on the Eastern Front, then in France. He understood the K5's capabilities and limitations better than anyone in the Wehrmacht. His crew called him Der Tunnelfuchs, the Tunnel Fox, because he'd survived 3 years of Allied air supremacy by mastering the art of shoot and hide. At 13:45, Müller's crew began the firing sequence. The K5 sat on a curved section of track inside a railway tunnel near Völklingen, 64 kilometers from Nancy. The tunnel provided perfect concealment. Allied reconnaissance aircraft had photographed it dozens of times without detecting the gun. The loading procedure was methodical. Each 255-kilogram shell required a hydraulic hoist and 4 men to maneuver into the breach. The propellant charges, 6 silk bags of smokeless powder, had to be loaded in precise sequence. Müller's fire control officer, Hauptmann Weber, calculated the firing solution using a mechanical computer and meteorological data. Wind speed, air density, temperature, everything affected the trajectory of a shell traveling 64 kilometers. At 14:30, the K-5 rolled forward on its tracks, emerging from the tunnel entrance. The crew had 15 minutes of exposure before American counter-battery radar could triangulate their position. Müller gave the order, "Fire free." The first shot thundered at 14:47. The recoil drove the entire 218-ton gun backward 3 meters on its tracks. The shell arced into the sky, reaching an apex of 12,000 meters before descending toward Nancy. Müller's spotter team, positioned 20 kilometers forward with radio equipment, reported the impact. Short by 400 meters, adjust elevation plus 2 degrees. The crew reloaded. At this rate, they could fire 3 more shots before American countermeasures forced them back into the tunnel. But Müller had a problem he didn't know about. At 14:15, 32 minutes before his first shot, American signal intelligence had intercepted his fire mission orders. The Third Army's Signal Intelligence Service operated from a converted schoolhouse 2 kilometers from Patton's headquarters. Its commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, ran the most sophisticated tactical SIGINT operation in the European theater. Harrison's unit combined 3 intelligence streams: Ultra, strategic signals intelligence from Bletchley Park, tactical radio intercepts, and direction-finding equipment that could locate enemy transmitters within minutes. At 14:15, Sergeant Robert Chen, a Chinese-American linguist fluent in German, intercepted a coded transmission on the Wehrmacht artillery command frequency. The message was encrypted, but Chen recognized the format, fire mission orders. He immediately flagged it for priority decryption. Here's where the American intelligence advantage became decisive. While German field commanders assumed their Enigma encrypted communications were secure, Allied codebreakers had been reading them since 1940. The decrypted message arrived on Harrison's desk at 14:22. Fire mission 447. Target, grid reference, 48.6937 degrees north, 6.1846 degrees east. Nancy sector, enemy command center. Execute 14:45 hours. Harrison cross-referenced the coordinates. His blood went cold. That was Patton's headquarters. He grabbed the field telephone. "Get me General Koch." Colonel Oscar Koch, Patton's G2 intelligence officer, was legendary for his analytical precision. He'd predicted the Battle of the Bulge a month before it happened. When Harrison's call came through, Koch was reviewing morning reconnaissance reports. "Colonel, we've intercepted a fire mission. They're targeting this building. First shot inbound in 23 minutes. Koch didn't hesitate. "Sound the alarm. Evacuate all personnel to the basement shelter, and get me counter-battery coordinates." But Koch knew evacuation wasn't enough. If the Germans had Patton's location, they'd keep firing until they destroyed the building. The only way to stop them was to destroy the gun first. Harrison's direction-finding teams were already working. 3 radio intercept stations, positioned in a triangle around Nancy, had detected the German fire control transmissions. By measuring the time difference of signal arrival, they could triangulate the source. At 14:35, Harrison had the location: railway tunnel, Völklingen sector. Bearing 085 degrees, range 64 kilometers. Koch immediately contacted the 12th Corps artillery. "Fire mission urgent." Counter-battery, grid reference provided. Target is enemy heavy artillery. Commence firing immediately. The American response was overwhelming. Within 8 minutes, 3 battalions of 155mm long tom guns, 36 tubes total, were laying down a barrage on the German tunnel entrance. But there was a problem. The German gun had already fired its first ranging shot, and it was getting closer. At 14:47, Müller's first shell impacted 400 meters short of Patton's headquarters, destroying a supply depot and killing 3 soldiers. Inside the Third Army Command Center, organized chaos erupted. Patton himself refused to evacuate. "I'm not hiding in a basement while my men are under fire," he told Koch. It took a direct order from Koch, backed by Patton's chief of staff, to get the general into the reinforced shelter. Müller's second shot fired at 14:52. The crew had adjusted elevation based on the spotter's report. This shell landed 150 meters short, close enough that the explosion shattered windows in Patton's former office. In the basement shelter, Patton listened to the impacts. He understood artillery. He'd commanded field artillery in World War I. He knew the Germans were walking their fire toward the building, standard counter-battery procedure. "How long until they hit us?" Patton asked Koch. "2, maybe 3 more shots, sir. But our counter-battery fire should reach them first." 64 kilometers away, Müller was racing against time. His crew reloaded for the third shot. But at 14:54, his radio operator reported incoming. American artillery, multiple batteries, targeting tunnel entrance. Müller faced an impossible decision. He could fire 1 more shot, possibly 2, before American shells made his position untenable. But each additional minute of exposure increased the risk of catastrophic hit on his gun, or crew. The K-5 was irreplaceable. Germany had only 25 of them left in operational condition. Losing one to American counter-battery fire would be a strategic disaster. But Müller also knew what was at stake. Killing Patton could change the entire course of the Western Front. It might buy Germany weeks, maybe months, of breathing room. He made his decision. Load high explosive, maximum charge, fire when ready. At 14:57, the third shell left the barrel. This one was different. Müller had ordered maximum propellant, trading accuracy for speed. The shell would arrive faster, giving the Americans less time to react. In Nancy, the shell impacted at 14:58, just 50 meters from Patton's building. The blast wave collapsed part of the eastern wall. Debris rained down on the basement shelter. Emergency lights flickered. Koch checked his watch. "They're dialed in. Next shot hits us." But at that exact moment, 64 kilometers away, the first American 155mm shells began impacting around the tunnel entrance. The tunnel shook. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Another explosion, closer this time, 20 meters. Hauptmann Weber grabbed Müller's arm. "Herr Oberst, we must withdraw." "Now." Müller stared at the breach. His crew could load 1 more shell, 1 more shot. But the American barrage was intensifying. He could hear the shells impacting in a systematic pattern. The Americans were bracketing the tunnel entrance, walking their fire closer with each salvo. The K-5's locomotive engaged. The massive gun began rolling backward on its tracks, retreating into the safety of the mountain. At 15:02, an American 155mm shell impacted directly where the K-5 had been positioned 30 seconds earlier. The explosion cratered the rail line and collapsed part of the tunnel entrance. Müller had escaped, but he'd failed his mission. In the 3rd Army Intelligence Center, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison monitored the counter-battery mission in real time. His direction-finding teams reported, "Target has ceased transmission. Probable withdrawal." Harrison knew what that meant. The German gun had retreated into the tunnel. They'd stopped it, but they hadn't destroyed it. He immediately contacted the 12th Corps Artillery. "Shift fire. Seal the tunnel entrance. I want that gun trapped inside." Over the next 20 minutes, American artillery poured 847 rounds onto the Völklingen tunnel complex. The goal wasn't to penetrate the mountain. That was impossible. The goal was to collapse enough rock and debris to trap the German gun inside, making it inoperable. But Harrison's real concern was broader. If the Germans had attempted to kill Patton once, they'd try again. And next time, they might succeed. He ordered a complete review of 3rd Army security protocols. Within 48 hours, Patton's headquarters relocated to a new position, coordinates known only to a handful of officers. Radio traffic was rerouted through dummy transmitters. Decoy command vehicles appeared at multiple locations. The intelligence war had escalated. Colonel Koch briefed Patton that evening. "Sir, we intercepted their fire mission 32 minutes before the first shot. That's only reason you're alive." Patton's response was characteristically blunt. "Then I owe my life to a bunch of radio operators and codebreakers. Make sure they know it." The next day, Patton personally visited Harrison's intelligence unit, an unprecedented gesture. He shook hands with every operator, including Sergeant Chen, who'd intercepted the original fire mission. But the incident had rattled Patton more than he admitted. For the first time since Normandy, he'd been the target, not just of enemy fire, but of a calculated assassination attempt. Coke noticed the change. Patton became more cautious about his movements, more aware of his vulnerability. The general, who'd once driven to the front lines in an open jeep, now traveled with armored escorts. The Germans had failed to kill Patton, but they'd succeeded in making him mortal. Oberst Müller's failure had immediate consequences. On October 14th, he was summoned to Wehrmacht Artillery Command in Saarbrücken. The meeting was brief and brutal. You had Patton in your sights. You had 30 minutes, and you retreated after 3 shots. Müller defended his decision. Herr General, the American counter-battery response was immediate and overwhelming. If I'd stayed, we would have lost the gun and the entire crew. Better to lose one gun than to let Patton live. But Müller's superiors faced a larger problem. The Americans had demonstrated something terrifying. They could intercept German fire missions in real time and respond faster than Wehrmacht artillery could complete an attack. This meant every German heavy artillery position was now vulnerable. The K5 guns, Germany's most powerful long-range weapons, had become liabilities instead of assets. Within a week, Wehrmacht Artillery Command ordered all railway guns withdrawn from forward positions. The K5s were repositioned to defensive roles along the Siegfried Line, where they could fire from fortified positions with overhead protection. Müller's gun remained trapped in the Völklingen tunnel for 6 days, while engineers cleared the collapsed entrance. When it finally emerged, it was immediately transported to a position near Trier, 80 kilometers from the front lines, too far to threaten American command centers. The assassination attempt had failed, and in failing, it had revealed the fatal weakness in German artillery doctrine. Without secure communications and air superiority, heavy weapons became targets instead of threats. Müller survived the war. In 1947, during Allied debriefings, he was asked about the Nancy fire mission. "We came within 50 meters, he said. 50 meters from changing history. But the Americans knew we were coming before we fired the first shot. That's when I understood we'd already lost the war." The October 12th assassination attempt on Patton represents a pivotal moment in the intelligence war of 1944. 3 factors saved Patton's life. First, ultra-intelligence. The ability to decrypt German communications in near real time gave the Allies a decisive advantage. By 1944, American signal intelligence could intercept, decrypt, and act on German orders faster than German field commanders could execute them. Second, direction-finding technology. The Americans had deployed sophisticated radio triangulation equipment that could locate enemy transmitters within minutes. This turned every German radio transmission into a potential death sentence. Third, artillery superiority. The Third Army could concentrate overwhelming firepower on any target within range. 36 155mm guns, firing in coordinated salvos, could deliver more destructive power than any German counter-battery response. But the incident also revealed American vulnerabilities. If the Germans had used a different attack method, aircraft, commandos, or sabotage, the outcome might have been different. Patton's security protocols were inadequate for a general whose location was being actively targeted. The broader lesson: by late 1944, the Allies had achieved information dominance. They could see German movements, read German communications, and respond faster than the Wehrmacht could adapt. This wasn't just about technology. It was about systems, the integration of intelligence gathering, analysis, and action into a seamless operational cycle. The Germans never attempted another direct artillery strike on Allied command centers. They'd learned the cost of failure. October 12th, 1944. A German artillery commander had 30 minutes to kill the most dangerous general in the Allied army. He came within 50 meters, but American intelligence moved faster. This is the hidden war, where battles are won not by courage or firepower, but by information and speed. If you want more untold stories from World War II, subscribe and hit the notification bell.